I'm Danielle Metz.
I'm Robert Vaughn.
And this is the Danielle Metz Show. Quote, I heard a cop once say that when people are guilty, they tend to plead and cry. And when they're not guilty, they tend to get angry when they are accused. Joe Rogan told Dr. Phil on a recent episode of The Joe Rogan Experience during a discussion about how to detect when guilty people are lying. People that are wrongly accused are generally irate from the beginning until the end, agreed Dr. Phil. So let's juxtapose two supposedly guilty individuals who were recently vindicated. President Trump, who had been under investigation for over 2 years for so-called Russian collusion, and Jessie Small, who had been facing 16 felony charges for filing a false police report and have had those charges dropped, at least for the time being, and the file sealed. What strikes me is that the media immediately assumed Trump was guilty because of his initial ire at the Mueller investigation, and immediately assumed that Smollet was innocent because of his tears and pleading to be believed. This is obviously narrative-driven, but what I found most interesting is how our current culture insists that it's only acceptable to be angry on behalf of somebody else, and is expected of you as a victim to cry for yourself. So, Robert, after 2 years, the Mueller report came up with no evidence of collusion, or anything else for that matter, but the mainstream media still considers Trump guilty of something. The investigation into Jessie Small came up with a plethora of evidence that it was a hoax, yet the same media says, we are confused and may never know what happened. So is it just a standard case of rules for thee and not for me, or is there something more sinister at play here?
Both. It's a standard case of rules for thee and not for me, and there's something more sinister at play here. Of course, we have... you'll never see Hillary Clinton in a jail cell, and she deserves to be. You'll never see Justin Trudeau imprisoned for interfering into the Attorney General and justice in Canada. You'll never see Jussie Smollet, apparently, stand trial for what he's done in what I consider to be a case of domestic terrorism and political interference. And so yes, there is a rules for thee and not for me. And so what do you do about it? What do you do about it is you expose it, and we talk about it just like we do here, and let people know that what's going on is unjust, it's immoral, it's absolutely sinister, as you say, and we move on from there. That's all we can do, unless we want to start taking matters in our own hands, which I don't necessarily advise it at this point in time. But let's keep that in our back pocket.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not off the table, but not quite yet. But one thing I found, well, it's the difference with the Mueller investigation, and like it was the Kavanaugh as well, right? Because they kept hammering that quote-unquote truth home night after night after night on CNN and MSNBC and CBC and all. They just kept repeating the lies over and over again with the rhetorical caveat, the what ifs, like if this is this, maybe this will be that. And that is already imprinted in people's minds. You can't wipe that clean. That's never going to go away. And most of the country does not pay attention to politics the way the rest of the people do. And when it comes out that there's nothing there, it doesn't matter, that sense of unease, that there has to be something there. He's just really that good at hiding it.
Yeah, the damage has been done, and that's usually the case with any accusation. People always will have in the back of their mind that something is untoward, something is wrong, or could be wrong, and we just haven't discovered it yet. It happens all the time with people who are, for example, accused of domestic abuse or of committing a crime, theft or something like that, and they're exonerated and found not guilty in a court of law. But in a court of law, at least in Canada, I think there's a big difference between not being found guilty and being proven innocent. So that's what sticks in people's minds, is that, oh, you were accused once of doing something rather heinous, you were found to be not guilty, or perhaps even found guilty, and then later evidence turned up to exonerate you or to set you free. But it's always in the back of people's minds. Your minds are wired now to associate a person with a particular crime. The same thing is with CNN and Donald Trump. It doesn't matter that he was not found guilty of collusion or any evidence or anything else. It doesn't matter. What has been done is it has been planted in the minds of people that he's a disreputable character, and for 2 years that was driven home, and it has done its damage.
Yeah, they had to de-legitimize his presidency because they couldn't accept that he could have beat their chosen one, Hillary Clinton. That they just can't comprehend it. It's just, that's why there's such a visceral, emotional reaction to him that is beyond the pale, but because they just can't accept it. So there has to be another reason. And the other reason, well, it's got to be the Russians, because that's everybody's favorite boogeyman, right?
It's always the Russians. I remember back in the 70s, people blamed ball lighting on the Russians. People blamed nasty storms on the Russians and their weather controlling machines. So
now they just replace that with climate change. Now it's climate change that does all that.
That's the other boogeyman, yeah. No, it's like in a court of law where you have the prosecutor, for example, introduce something that is prejudicial, and the judge rules that, no, you can't admit that evidence, and he instructs the jury to disregard it. Yeah, right. Like you can turn off, you have a way back machine and turn it off, you know. And,
or a Men in Black pen where they can erase people's memories.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. Now, an honest person would try to disregard something that has been introduced which should not have been introduced, like Russian collusion with President Trump. But most people are people, and in the back of their mind, or at least subconsciously, it's a nagging thing that will damage his reputation from now on. Same with Jessie Smollet, except in this case it's justified, I think, because it's no doubt now that he did what he did, and it was something that he shouldn't have done, and he should have been brought to justice for it. But
the fact that he was saying from the outset, I'm innocent, and I want those white men brought to justice for what they did to me, and I want to show that I'm a fighter in this. And now it's like, oh yeah, no, it's time to move on. It's all good. Yeah, we'll just, it wasn't really that bad. And no, we don't want to prosecute the Nigerians. And oh yeah, and I'll be willing to forfeit my $10,000 bond. No worries, but I'm still innocent.
If he was still innocent, why would he want to still forfeit his bail? What was it, a bail deposit or something?
Yeah,
why would he want to do that? If I was totally innocent, I'd be screaming blue bloody murder to give me my money back.
Exactly. That goes back to the first thing I said about the Joe Rogan quote. People who are innocent tend to be very angry when they're accused. People who are guilty tend to plead and cry and do just like he did on TV when he was interviewed right after it happened. He was crying and I wouldn't be my mother's son if any of this was even remotely true what they've said of me. And he's crying. He's not mad about it. He's pleading for people to, me, God is my witness. I would never do this. It's just those convincing statements are what they're called.
Then again, I do not subscribe to the Dr. Phil's school of philosophy or psychology, and as a matter of fact, I think that he's probably done a lot of damage. But I don't know too much about the man, except I did see one time that he said if he ever found that a person he was talking to was an atheist, he would end the conversation because the man is automatically immoral. So,
really?
Yeah, so that kind of nonsense. So I would not take Dr. Phil. And there's a case in Canada that comes to mind of a nurse who was accused of killing people. And when the police confronted her, she immediately invoked her right not to speak at all to the police. And when she did that, they, I guess, took the Dr. Phil school of philosophy and assumed her guilt because she did not want to say anything without a lawyer present.
Well, actually, that wasn't Dr. Phil that said that. That was Joe Rogan speaking to Dr.
I'm sorry.
Phil. And he said that he heard a cop tell him that once.
Yeah,
so that was from a police officer.
Neither Joe Rogan nor Dr. Phil would I take as a template for my philosophy. But the thing is that this woman was eventually found not guilty after, I guess, spending a small fortune trying to defend herself simply for the fact that she didn't want to say anything to the police without the presence of a lawyer.
I would never. I know enough lawyer friends that they say that nope, if you're accused of anything, no matter if you can be not guilty, do not speak till you're like, because you don't know what you say that might incriminate yourself unwittingly, which you don't even know you're doing.
True enough, yeah, but unfortunately that may end up you being in a court of law trying to defend yourself simply for the fact that you didn't want to speak to a cop. But that's the way the system works, or doesn't work, I'm afraid. And we're left with people like Jussie Smollet, Donald Trump, the SNC-Lavalin scandal in Canada, and people being put in prison who shouldn't be, and people not going to prison who shouldn't be. But hey, what do you do? What do you do, Danielle?
Well, it doesn't hurt that Jessie Smollet has friends in high places. He was friends with Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, and phone calls were made, and I think somebody requested a Freedom of Information Act before the records were sealed, so they got some of the dirt on it, and it's Chicago justice, right? It's how they do it in that town.
Yes, I understand that it was Hillary Clinton's chief of staff, if you want to call her that, who called the prosecutor in Chicago.
Kim Fox, I think.
I forget her name. and asked that, of course, that to be expunged. And well, lo and behold, it was. And not only that, it was sealed.
Yeah, that was the weird part. Sealed. That nothing to see here, nothing at all. And so now he's got nothing on his record, and he still maintains his innocence. And they're hinting that he might be back on Empire.
Yes,
not for this
if
season,
season
but
6,
next season.
if season 6 is approved, yeah, apparently he might come back, which I guess is a shame, because I think that a person like that should not go unpunished for what he's done. Which
and then I believe the previous episode that we did discussing this case, I said, I bet you nothing happens to him. And because this is, and even though the federal FBI, the federal charges for the letter, the threatening letter that he supposedly sent himself, those charges are still maybe pending, but I don't think anything's going to come of it.
Probably not, unfortunately.
They probably look at it, they go, it's small potatoes, but they don't realize, like you said, it's an act of domestic terrorism. It's not, he's not just some Joe Blow off the street that just, put a swastika on his door and started a GoFundMe campaign. This is a major player. He's now a major player. He's blown this into a black versus white issue. He's blown it into a Trump versus Barack Obama, essentially, issue. And he created this. It was political in nature. So there, it's got to be treated way more seriously than just nobody that did this.
It was a staged crime, and with the intent purpose of either furthering his career, which apparently it has now done, or politically interfering.
Never heard of him before.
Exactly. Who ever heard of him? And a name like Jussie. What do you do? Change the E to a U? I like Chris Rock's idea. Let's just call him Jessie from now on, because he doesn't deserve any respect
of the U. Yeah. That was great, and they told him not to do any Jussie jokes. He went, yeah, they told me not to do any Jussie jokes. So anyway, I'm doing a Jussie joke.
Yeah, at least he didn't get an award from the NAACP, but then again, how much weight does that hold?
Well, Christy Blasey Ford, after that whole thing, got the Woman of the Year award from some, I think it was Vogue magazine or Glamour or something like that. It's like, really?
Yeah, the world is turned upside down. It really is. It's on its head.
There's no consequences to any of these actions. And as the mayor of Chicago, after lambasting this whole thing about, Jussie was obviously guilty, said it's because of the toxic environment that Trump has created that Jussie thought he could get away with this. Yep. Okay, so even this is Trump's fault. Yeah, everything has to go back to Trump. It's just amazing the fixation that these people have on him, and like I said before, the visceral hatred of a man who has done nothing to them personally and used to be all of their best friends before he got elected as a Republican president.
I keep reminding people that the philosophy behind these people, these sinister people, is the same philosophy that has caused the deaths of over 100 million people in the last 100 years. Mm-hmm. So they stop at nothing. They really do stop at nothing. This is small potatoes for them.
Yep.
Lying to police, setting up false crimes, lying to the masses about Russian collusion. Nothing. Small potatoes. Yep. Try putting people in gas chambers. Try starving people deliberately over in the Ukraine. Same philosophy, just a different degree of interference in people's lives.
Better optics.
Better optics, yeah. But it's the same philosophy. The same philosophy that drove people to their deaths in Europe and in Asia is the same philosophy driving Hillary Clinton, Jussie Smollett, CNN, the people at Google. By the way, I see Tommy Robinson now has had his YouTube channel.
Yep.
Oh, no, you can post something to YouTube, they're saying.
No one can find it.
Because he hasn't crossed the line, but he's come so close that we're going to make sure that you can't be found in search results. Nobody can subscribe to you. Nobody knows how many times your video has been seen. You have to be able to share a direct link of the video for anybody to see it. And so it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, they just put him in basically internet jail.
Yes, this is how, as Owen Benjamin said the other day, this is how people get erased.
Yep.
And
like
Carl I said, Benjamin. This is nothing.
It was Carl Benjamin, wasn't it?
Carl.
Yes.
Sargon of Akkad.
Yeah, Sargon of Akkad.
I'll just call him Sargon of Akkad from now on because I forget the
yeah, they're too close.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is exactly it. This is how people get erased, and that's what they were good at back in the good old Soviet days. People just disappeared. They have those famous pictures of Stalin there used to be a guy standing next to him, and now there's not, because he's been erased.
Yeah.
And that's what they do on the internet.
There's a Soviet, or a Russian word, I should say, for how people disseminated subversive literature. Subversive meaning against the Soviet Union, so it would be freedom literature back in that time, and it was called samizdat. A samizdat would be a pamphlet that they would surreptitiously just slip somebody on the street or put somewhere so that people could find it, expressing points of view that were antithetical to the communist Soviet regime. And
maybe we should rename our show.
Yeah, but it looks as if this is the way that things are going. If you're going to be expunged from the social media that has developed over the last 15 years, then perhaps what we should have to do is go back to printing up pamphlets and going door to door and letting people know about your point of views directly rather than over communist-controlled social media.
Well, while they're still allowing us to do this, Robert, I'd like to take this chance to say take care, behave yourself, and we'll talk again soon, if they let us. Cheers.
If you've enjoyed this presentation, visit justrightmedia.org for more programming that's not right-wing, it's just right.